If this is your first time here checking out this channel, basically a quick overview. We are in a intermodal carrier, do a lot of drayage work, we run container, no matter the distance, we'll haul it. Weight, we're not limited on weight. We do a lot of intermodal work. That's majority of our loads. Then we do some dry box, we do some reefer, we do some power only. Whatever it is, as long as they hook to the fifth wheel, we'll do it. So basically we're majority intermodal, which means we pick up from the port, deliver to the port. Most of the containers we haul are not already mounted to the chassis when we go to the port. So you gotta get a chassis, you gotta go back up to the stack, have them put the container on. That's when you're picking up at the port. When we're taking into the port, we gotta go to the stack, take the container off the chassis. If we're going to reuse the chassis, we keep it for the next container. If we're not going to use the chassis, we drop it off at the chassis yard. And that's majority of our loads. We have some loads that don't pick up or deliver to the port. It's still container load. We might pick it up from a customer location, take it to another location, and drop it if it's a one-way move. Or if it's a round trip move, we might pick it up from the customer location, go to another customer, get loaded, and take it back to the customer location or wherever they need it. So that's basically most we do. Once in a while we have other stuff come up, like a container might be on somebody's chassis and the customer needed move off that chassis, put on another chassis. So we have a location that we use to do transfers. So we'll go there, take the container off that chassis, put it onto another chassis. And on this video, I'm just gonna go over majority of the fees that you're gonna come across if you decide to be an intermodal carrier. If you're thinking about being a carrier, majority of these fees you're going to come across, some of them on a daily basis, some of them once in a while. If you lease on to a carrier, you might know about some of these fees. Some of them you might not know about because the carrier take care of it and you don't have nothing to do with it. Likewise, if you're a company driver and you haul intermodal, you might know about some of these fees also. Some of them you're not going to be familiar with unless you're doing your research to go out on your own as a carrier or somebody told you about it. Because some of them, the carrier, if you're a company driver or you lease on to the carrier don't mention them to you because they take care of it on their end. Line haul. Line haul is a basic fee that whether you're pulling dry box, reefer, flatbed, whatever you're pulling, line haul gonna come into play at some point. That's basically your base rate that you charge the customer to haul the load from point A to point B. And line haul, the way you figure out your line haul, you need to figure out what's your cost to operate. And then you could use those numbers to figure out your line haul and what you'll haul the load for. This video will not be a video where we mentioning how much these fees are. This basically just a list of what you could charge for or what you will be charging for, or what the customer will request how much you charge for it. Another one is fuel surcharge. Sometimes you'll see the line haul and the fuel surcharge tied into one. Some customer will ask for a rate with it separate. Some customers will ask for a rate with it together. Some websites show you the daily fuel surcharge rate. Likewise, some load boards show it to you also. So if you're trying to figure out how much to charge for fuel surcharge, you could go to the website and figure that out. It's right across the board. It'll show you the fuel surcharge rate for your area. It'll show you the weekly fuel surcharge rate, the daily fuel surcharge rate, and it'll also show you the history of the fuel surcharge rates. Chassis fee. If you're not familiar with a chassis, I have plenty of videos in the past that goes over chassis. Some of them I mentioned the fees in it. I mentioned how you could get a chassis if you're going to buy your own or if you're going to rent a chassis. That's also a fee you got to charge for the daily chassis use. Likewise, some customers going to ask for a flat rate that includes the chassis fee. Some customers going to want it as an itemized charge. So they need it separate from your line haul, your fuel surcharge, and all the other charges. Your chassis fee, a lot of times, is not one fee right across the board. Normally, you charge based on the size of the chassis. For example, you have a 20-foot chassis, you have a 40-foot chassis, you have a 45. Some areas run 53s, but you could charge for those. You could charge based on that. You could charge based on regular tandem axle or triaxle. Triaxle, majority of the time, that's where you're going to see a difference in fees with the regular tandem axle and the triaxle. Because the triaxle, most time you're going to haul the heavier loads on the triaxle. Pre-pull. Pre-pull, there's a fee for that. Basically, you, like for example, you pull the container today, the customer don't want it for another 2 days. So you pre-pull it. You pull it ahead of time. A lot of times, why the customer wants you to do that is to avoid the charges in the port if the container stay in the port longer than the 3 days. So what they'll do is once the ship arrive, they have a certain amount of days to get the container out. Then after that amount of days, it come at a daily charge. So what they'll do is they'll wait till the last day, then they try to find a carrier to pull it out on the last day and hold it for the rest of the days until the customer ready to receive it. So in that situation, you would charge them for pre-pull, you would charge them for storage, because you gotta store it for a certain amount of days until they're ready to receive it, and you would also charge them a daily chassis fee, because for every day that container sitting on that chassis and not moving, you losing the use of that chassis for that day. So somebody gotta pay for that chassis sitting there like that. Detention. That's one you're familiar with from pulling driver and reefer and all those other trailer types. Basically, how long you sit in there for them to load you or unload you. Normally, industry-wise, most times you see the first 2 hours free, and then it's X amount of dollars an hour after that. Some people charging 30 minutes increments, 15-minute increments, or hourly. Some customers don't like to pay, and you have some that want more than the first 2 hours free. They might request the first 3 hours free, the first 5 hours free, or something like that. Dry run. Dry run is basically you book a load with a customer. You're going 300 miles with an empty container to go get loaded and take it back to the port. You show up at the customer 300 miles away, they told you that load has been canceled, or they already shipped that load, or the load not going to be ready until next week. In that situation, you could charge a dry run because you go there, you didn't get a product, and you're coming back with an empty container. You still charge them for the run. You can charge them the same rate that you were booking the load for, or you could charge them a lower rate. It's all up to you. And a lot of these charges will be different for everybody. You could ask around your area, because on the west coast, some of these charges might be more than what we charging over here on the east coast. So you could ask around your area if you're not familiar with these charges, see how much everybody else charging for these fees, and then you could base yours on that. And they also based on your operating costs. Storage. I had already mentioned storage when I mentioned the pre-pull, but basically is you keeping the container, whether it's loaded or empty, until either the customer ready to receive the product or the customer ready to load the container. For whatever days you have the container sitting on your yard, you're charging somebody for storage. Split. That's like you go to one location to pick up the chassis, then you have to go to another location to pick up the container. So your chassis yard might be 5 miles away from the port where you're picking up your container. So you could charge a split fee for that because you're not picking up everything at the same place. Load and unload. It might be driver assist with the loading. It might be driver load or unload, whichever it is. So you gotta determine what's your rate to unload it or load it, or what's your rate for your driver to load it or unload it. I just recently had a load like that where the customer unloaded the container. They leave a lot of stuff in the container that gotta go to the dump. So I had to provide them a rate to unload all that stuff that they leave in the container. Then I had to also submit a quote for extra stop plus the fee to dump it. Because depending on where you're going to dump it, they might have a fee that you gotta pay in order to dump it. A crane fee. Depends on what you're hauling, you might not come across this one right here. But basically is you have a container, say it's an import coming from overseas, you pick it up at the port, going to deliver it at the customer. But the customer going to keep the container. So they're going to take the container off the chassis and you going to come back with the chassis with no container on it. So they might ask you, what's the fee for you to get a crane to lift the container off the chassis and put it down on the ground or wherever they want to put it. In that case, it's up to you if you want to do that or not. You could tell them Your service is just to move the container from port to customer. Getting a crane, they have to set that up on their own. Or you could set it up on your own. What you'll do is call around the area wherever you're going to deliver it. You find some crane service in the area, explain to them what you need done. You need a container taken off a chassis and put down on the ground. They might want to know what's the weight. That way they know which crane to carry out there, the size of the container, um, how far they're going to have to put it from where they take it off at, and stuff like that. They'll give you a rate for that, and you add that rate along with all the other rates that you're submitting for that job. Hazmat. Hazmat is one that a lot of small carriers don't mess with. It comes with extra insurance, extra registration based on the state you're running in. Placards. Sometimes you book a hazmat load and the customer don't provide placards, so you gotta bring your own placards. You gotta buy the placards. You gotta install the placards. In that case, there's a fee for everything. If they send a container to the port without the placards on it, the port gonna charge them to install the placards. So it's just right for you to do the same. Storage. I already went over storing the container. This storage is to store the contents that's inside the container, whether it's palletized or it's crates or whatever it is. Sometimes they might have a container coming in from overseas and they want you to empty the contents out of it and store it and then return the empty container to the empty yard or the port, wherever they tell you to return it to. And they'll have you store the contents that was inside the container until the customer ready to receive it. So there's another fee for storing pallets if you provide that service. And more, more than likely, if you're providing that service to store pallets, you're also providing cross-docking service, which likewise a container come, the stuff in the container got split to different locations. It's going to different locations, so they want you to empty the container and load the stuff on a dry van, flatbed, reefer, whatever type of trailer they decide they're going to ship it out on. So you will provide cross-docking service for the contents that was inside the container. Lumper fee. Mostly when you see a lumper fee, it be a lot of food service warehouse. Like Food Lion or one of those grocery warehouses or the cold storage. A lot of those have a lumper fee for them to unload the container. The lumper fee can work different ways. You could get there to unload it and you pay the fee and then submit the receipt for them to send you a new rate con that includes a lumper fee. Or you could go there, find out how much is the lumper fee, contact the customer or the broker, they'll send you a com check or express code for you to use that and pay for the lumper. So you could pay it directly or you could pay it indirectly. It all depends on what you agree to in your rate con. Overweight. Industries right across the board Most people charge an overweight fee if the container overweight. Drop fee. Sometimes you're gonna run into a situation where you book a load, the one you bring the empty container come and drop it, or the loaded container come and drop it, and then they'll tell you pick up back the container in 2 days or pick up back the container the next day. That's when you'll have a drop fee involved, because you got a bobtail order there, and then you got a bobtail back there another day to come pick up the container. So you gotta get compensated for your time and your fuel bobtailing out of there and coming back there. Reefer, also a fee for reefer, hauling reefer, because hauling reefer, it comes with a lot more responsibility than hauling a regular dry van load. And depending on where you're going, it might involve you have to refuel that reefer. It also comes with an extra stop in the port to go put on that reefer unit or take off the reefer unit, which is the genset. That also comes at a fee. To rent that genset that you'll see on the front of the container, or some of them at the belly of the genset, the belly of the chassis, that's called a belly unit or a belly mount. The port rent those at a different fee than the fee you're renting the chassis for. So if you have a chassis with a genset on it, you gotta be charging a fee for that genset load also, that reefer load. You gotta be charging a genset fee if you have your own. Normally when I have reefer loads, I try not to get involved with that part of the charges. I let the customer know they could contact the port, and the port will instruct them how to set up the genset rental, and they could set it up. So when I go to the port, I pick up the container, then I go over to the genset side, pick up the genset, and I'm out of there. I don't get involved with paying the charges or anything like that. Per diem. Per diem charge can be very high, and it go up on a daily basis. That's basically how long the container out the port before you return it. And that's based on the ship line, not the port. The ship line might give you 5 days out the port. They might give you 3 days out the port for having the container out the port. After that free time, the first day might be $180 a day. Second day might be $230 a day. By the time you reach the fifth day, it might be $400 or $500 a day. And when they send their charge, it normally gets sent to the carrier the scat code belong to that pull the container out the port. A lot of customers will pay the demurrage fee, but you're going to run into a few of them who don't want to pay it. If the customer don't want to pay the demurrage fee, contact the ship line, file a dispute, let them know who the customer is or who the broker is, and a lot of times they'll get involved and they'll contact the customer or the broker and try to get the payment directly from them. The per diem fee directly from them. Demurrage fee. Demurrage fee is when the container in the port past the 3 days, and now the customer or the broker got paid to get the container released. That one, I kind of like the demurrage fees more than the per diem fee, because the demurrage fee is not tied to the carrier scat code, because the carrier has not picked up the container out of the port yet. So it will be on the customer or the broker to the fee will be tied directly to them. So that's who they're going to be contacting, or that's who need to contact the port to pay the fee in order to get the container released. If they don't pay it, they can't get the container. So they can't play games around with the carrier when it comes to demurrage fee because the bill not coming to the carrier. The per diem fee, they'll play games with it because that invoice come to the carrier. And if you the carrier and you get a bill for 30,000 for per diem and it gotta be paid up within a certain amount of days, that amount of days pass, sometimes they give you an extension. But if you get to the point where it got to pay, they'll stop you from pulling that ship line container until you pay that fee. So if you have a customer that haul a lot of Hapag Lloyd and Hapag Lloyd stop you from pulling their container because you have you have a per diem fee that hasn't been paid, that'll be a big dent into your income because you can't work that ship line. Congestion fee. You see that a lot during the pandemic when the ports were congested. Okay, you go on the port and it take you 3, 4, 5 hours to make one move. Go and get a box and come out. So the congestion fee, you used to see that a lot in that town. Brokers and customers that were willing to pay a congestion fee in order to get the container out. Now you don't see that a lot because the ports I deal with, they're not as congested as they was before. So that's majority of the fees that you're gonna come across. If it's any that I haven't listed, you could drop them in the comment. And if anything, I'll make another video and include them. Or other people want to know about the fees, they'll see it in the comment and they could do their research and get familiar with them. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. You'll know when we drop videos. We drop all type of videos, booking loads, invoicing customers, situation you run into out here with these containers, and all different type of videos. But most of it have to do with pulling containers in and out the ports.